Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different...
If you've ever wondered what happens when a political party flirts a little too hard with socialism, today's story is that exact moment when everyone says, "Don't do it," and it gets done anyway. Bill Maher has once again unloaded on AOC, Bernie Sanders, and rising progressive figures like Zoran Mamdani. This time he isn't just irritated. He's staging a full-blown intervention. Maher, a lifelong Democrat, now sounds like the only sober friend at a party watching everyone else make terrible decisions. He's looking at the party's left wing and basically saying, "Please stop before you wreck the whole thing." But instead of slowing down, they're doubling down. AOC recently brushed off criticism by suggesting people should just get to know Mamdani. That line might work on a dating app, but it's a risky way to sell an ideology with a long track record. What makes it more ironic is that this sudden call for open-mindedness never applied to conservatives or Donald Trump. Now she's all about hearing people out selectively. Even moderates inside her own party are starting to notice the contradiction.
Say to the skeptics, though, in the party, or want to keep him at arm's distance, some who have some problems with him, even some fellow New Yorkers in the swing districts outside the city.
Get to know him. Get to know him. You know, this is not about having any kind of hard line. I think that if anybody is skeptical, I would say get to know him. And once you get into a room with him, kick the tires yourself and make your own assessment instead of just kind of making assessments from what you may see on television. If you have the ability to meet someone in person, you should meet them before you judge.
Maher, unsurprisingly, isn't buying any of it. He goes straight to one of his favorite comparisons. South Korea versus North Korea viewed from space at night. One side glowing with activity, the other nearly pitch black. Then he brings up Venezuela, once wealthier than Poland, until the two countries went in opposite economic directions. Poland embraced capitalism. Venezuela embraced socialism and paid the price. Inflation, shortages, collapse, mass migration. Maher's point is simple. No city, not even New York, is immune to economic reality. There's no special exemption where socialism suddenly works because the skyline is taller. Mamdani may be charismatic and energetic, but history doesn't grade enthusiasm kindly. AOC says people should get to know him. Maher says people should get to know history. And history, as he keeps reminding everyone, has never been kind to socialism.
The kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century, a mess. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Maher also makes a distinction many voters overlook. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Mamdani aren't traditional Democrats. They're democratic socialists. They proudly say so. The problem is the party branding blurs that line, and voters often don't realize what they're actually being sold. Maher's sharpest observation might be this. These politicians are only able to attack capitalism because capitalism made them famous. Their platforms exist because the system they criticize allowed them to rise in the first place.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people...
Bernie's book deals, AOC's massive online following, media influence, and fundraising power all depend on a capitalist system. Under real socialism, outspoken critics don't become celebrities. They become liabilities. Maher doesn't need to exaggerate that point. History already did the work for him.
This election is taking place when we have an administration in Washington which every day is moving us toward an authoritarian society.
This is America, New York City. Don't let them tell you any different. Don't let them tell you that we are the exception. We are the rule. We set the bar for America. I'm talking to you, Donald Trump.
Let our words ring out so loud tonight that Andrew Cuomo can hear them in his $8,000 a month apartment. New York is not for sale.
That contradiction is what clearly frustrates him the most. The loudest critics of capitalism are also the people benefiting from it the most. Maher is careful to say capitalism isn't perfect. It's flawed, uneven, and often unfair. But compared to socialism, which has a near-perfect record of failure, capitalism looks like the stable option. Not glamorous, not flawless, but functional. He then shifts to a warning Democrats have heard before. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger once urged the party to move back toward the center and drop the socialist label. Moderates win elections, she said. Extremes get attention, not power. She followed her own advice and won. The party ignored her.
Tommy seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, lady?
Maher points out that the Democratic Party isn't being guided by its moderates. It's being dragged by its loudest fringes. The people who dominate social media but don't represent swing voters. Promoting radical agendas isn't bold strategy. It's political roulette. And the silence from moderates inside the party isn't harmless. When no one pushes back, the extremes don't just influence the party. They define it.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win. And Democrats should recognize the party moved too far left on social issues after Obama left.
The data backs this up. In 2024, Democrats who won in districts Trump carried were all moderates. Not a single Democratic socialist flipped one of those seats. Even mainstream outlets acknowledged the pattern. The path to victory runs through the center. Yet instead of adjusting, party leadership leaned harder into ideological messaging. Maher sees it as choosing identity theater over electability. Voters don't want constant performance. They want stability, competence, and results.
So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to. Thing is, socialism will because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked, like Kevin Federline.
Maher also stresses that socialism doesn't fail quietly. It collapses loudly. Venezuela is the most recent example. Millions fled the country when the system broke down. That wasn't theory. That was reality. So when progressives argue that New York will be different, Maher flips the logic. If socialism is the rule, then the outcome is predictable. The scale might change, but the ending doesn't.
Turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
He returns to Bernie Sanders' healthcare proposal for one simple reason. Vermont tried it. On a small scale. In a deeply progressive state. And it still collapsed under its own cost. The numbers didn't work. The funding didn't exist. If it failed there, Maher asks, how does anyone seriously believe it would succeed in a massive, complex city like New York?
And can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar. Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week.
Maher's closing message is blunt. Democratic socialism looks great on paper. It sounds compassionate in speeches. But when tested in the real world, it produces the same results every time. Economic strain, instability, and backlash. America, he argues, isn't asking for revolution. It's asking for practical leadership. If Democrats want to win future elections, they'll need to stop chasing ideological purity and start listening to the voters who decide outcomes. Whether the party learns that lesson or keeps drifting left is still an open question. And that's where today's commentary ends. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments where you think the party is headed next.